My name is Sherry Creso. I'm the host of the show. This is My Baby Experts. And for those of you who have been with us, thank you for coming back week after week after week to make this the most amazing 2 hours tonight of my entire week. And for those of you who are new to our show tonight, welcome. Welcome to an amazing community of new parents, expecting parents, where we just spend the hour talking about topics that are so important to empower ourselves, give ourselves knowledge, and really bring us all together in a non-judgmental way to make the best decisions for ourselves and for our babies. So let's move on to tonight's topic. Tonight's topic is one that I'm very proud and excited to be doing because many of you may not, if you don't know me, let me give you a little bit of my background. I am a certified nurse midwife. I'm a board-certified lactation consultant. I was a labor and delivery nurse before that for many, many years. I've spent the last 22 years of my life working with new and expecting parents through their pregnancy, through birth, through breastfeeding, and now as a parent educator doing the show and my DVD programs on breastfeeding and everything else. But the majority of the time that in my professional career I spent as a nurse midwife, and doing that I had my own private practice and I delivered over 600 babies in that practice at the time, and many of you have asked me to do shows on birth, and it's something that we haven't done in a while. Tonight is a show all about the unfortunate high cesarean section rate that we are seeing in this country, the epidemic rates that we have hit in this country, and how to really educate yourself, to inspire yourself, to gain the knowledge, to have the most empowering birth experience for yourself that you can. And I brought together some of the best people out there to have this conversation with. They're on the phone with me right now, and I'm about to introduce them, and you're going to see 3 little pictures show up so we can see who they are. Okay, first I have Desiree Andrews. She is the president of ICAN, and that's the International Cesarean Awareness Network. Hello, Desiree. Welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, great.
Glad to be here tonight.
Oh, we're so happy to have you here, too. We also have Gina. Gina Crosley-Corcoran. She is a mom, and she's a doula, and she's a fantastic blogger, and she has the feministbreeder.com. That is her website. Hi, Gina. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Hi, Gina. You were just on just a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, we're doing a show. Quick, we're doing it fast. And I'm so happy to have you back. And we also have another fantastic person that I had the pleasure to meet, Jill Arnold, and she is also a mom and a blogger, and she is theunnecessarian.com. That is a fantastic name. I love that, Jill.
Thanks, Sherry. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you for being here. It's so awesome. I mean, I didn't know if Taylor was going to be able to get all your pictures up here, but as I can see right now, you guys are all here with me, and we can get started on a really, really important topic, I know, not just to me, but to all 3 of you. Let's start first.
We have one more guest coming a little later.
Right. We do have a surprise guest that's going to be coming on a little bit later. And what we're going to do is we're going to interrupt the show when she calls in because she had a short time window, but we wanted to include her. And that's Lynn Wolfe, and she is a marketing director for Ricky Lake and My Best Birth, and also The Business of Being Born, a movie that I love and many of you out there have watched and seen. And she's going to be on with us in a little while to talk a little bit more about the new movie that's coming out and what we can do to support it. So I think it's fantastic. So when she calls in, we'll just say Lynn's here, and we'll bring Lynn on. Okay. So you guys, let's talk a little bit about the importance of this topic. Desiree, maybe you can start, and let's talk. Tell us a little bit about ICAN, because it's such an amazing, important organization, and I think all our viewers would like to hear more about what is it all about.
Well, ICAN started back in 1982 by a group of mothers who were really dissatisfied with having cesareans and looking for VBAC options. So this has been a long time. Yeah. We've been kind of focusing on the same things. We've really looked at support and education and helping women in their VBAC class, but also in family-centered cesareans if they need to have a cesarean or they choose one for their own reasons. So we have lots of online options and local in-person groups in several countries around the world.
Yeah. You have how many different locations did you have? You said it was like 130 different.
Mm-hmm.
100.
Give or take, depending on the day. There's about 130 chapters,
Right.
and we're now in, let's see, 2 countries in Europe, Mexico and Canada, and looking at several other locations as well.
Yeah.
That we're looking at regional directors starting chapters localized for their region.
Yeah. And so, Desiree, personally, what got you started to do this? How did you get involved in all of this?
I actually found ICAN through my own professional path, becoming a doula and a child protector after I had all my children.
Yes.
And I'd had 2 cesareans and 2 VBACs. So when I saw the mission and started connecting with ICANers, as we call them, I said, okay, this is a place for me.
Mm-hmm.
And in just a few short years, I joined the board and then became a president.
Wow, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. And so the work that you guys are doing, I know, is just amazing to really help moms heal, right? To really help moms find a support network where they can get information, find each other. What would you say? What would you say is the biggest contribution that the organization makes to new moms or to moms that have? Is it just for moms who have had a cesarean, or is it for all moms to be able to join?
It's really for all childbearing women because we're all at risk with a near 3rd cesarean rate in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Jill will talk about that more as well. With such high cesarean rates, on average, every woman is at risk whether or not she's already had children or she's a first-time mom or she's a previous cesarean mom.
Yes.
So it's really open to everyone because that early education, like with most things, can really be preventative.
Yes.
And if it's not preventative for some reason, it can give them information for the future to share or for the next, their next pregnancy and birth.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of that, let's bring Jill on for a second. Jill, so nice to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about your website, about yourself, and how you got into this, and how all 3 of you have really come to it from a different place, and including myself. So it's really interesting to hear your stories and tell us why you started to do this.
Wow. Oh, in a nutshell, I suppose.
That's a loaded question, big question.
There are no nutshells with me. You're about to find out I don't do radio or podcast. So
you're awesome.
I appreciate you having me here, Sherry.
You are awesome. You just tell me. You talk.
Thank you.
Tell me your story. It's awesome.
Well, thanks. It's where, and I guess that's where I don't. That's what I don't have in common with Gina and Desiree is that I refused a primary C-section, which was pretty difficult. First-time parent, you don't know what to do. Everything's kind of scary, and what happened was I was 38 weeks pregnant and had an ultrasound to estimate fetal weight, and they found the baby was going to be, or they estimated, 10 pounds. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm 5'11", and I have a family history of huge babies, and I thought, well, I guess I'm having a big baby. I guess that's what we're there. And didn't think a whole lot of it until I got a call from a midwife at the hospital who said that I needed to have a C-section. And so she transferred my care to an obstetrician. And so basically had a calendar open. And just, she was very nice. Everyone was very nice. Said they gave me these worst-case scenarios of everything terrible that was going to happen. And just kind of was ready to schedule a C-section. And I questioned it. And I guess a lot of people don't question it. And so it turned into a week process of a lot of research and a lot of reading a lot of, at the time felt very morbid, these facts and figures about fetal death and total dystocia and everything else. And ultimately, I had the baby vaginally when the labor spontaneously showed up and refused a C-section and had the baby. But that was the turning point. And then when I had a daughter later at the birth center, I thought, I wonder if it would be helpful to put information out there for other new parents. And I thought, when I started the blog, I thought, well, I'll just get a couple stack pages up there and see if this would be helpful for, if it could help at least one family to not go through what I went through, it'd be great. And then I thought, well, I'll start blogging. And so that's that's where the cesarean.com started.
Yeah, it's really amazing. We gain so many times, we come to what we're supposed to be doing in our life and how we help others from the adversity that we've faced ourselves. And when you told me about that story and about yourself, and I thought, you didn't have a C-section, but you struggled and you had to fight for what you wanted. And it was so impactful for you that it caused you to want to make a change for other women and to provide the information, like you said, not having to search the internet, having one place where they can go and read something, bringing it all together and knowing they're not alone. Yeah, I know that, from my own practice, it was really very similar for me too. Well, I'll get into that in a little while. First, I want to just ask Gina, because I know Gina's waiting by here too, and I want to introduce Gina. Gina, let's hear from you too, because I know you've had a completely different experience, and you do some amazing blog, and you have amazing insight into this whole community, and so much to offer. Tell me a little bit about how you got started and how you became part of this community.
Sure. Thanks, Sherry.
Sure.
I had a C-section, my first one, because I just went into motherhood really just completely freaked out about the idea of having a baby at all.
Yeah.
It was a surprise pregnancy, and I wasn't totally, on board with the whole thing, until they handed me a baby. And I was like, oh, I guess I love this baby, and
Yes.
and that really changed things for me. But the whole pregnancy, I was really more caught up in, oh God, just make this stop.
Yes.
This is crazy. I can't do this. I'm just really doubting myself, and having grown up with all these stories about how women die in childbirth, and I just thought, I'll do everything the OB says, and minimize the damage to me, if I can. And then, went into the hospital, I went in for an induction because, I supposedly had a big baby, and, I supposedly, way past my due date and blah, blah, blah. Went in and got put through that, very stereotypical roller coaster of, the cascade of interventions leading to a C-section. And I had no idea what happened to me. I had no idea how common it was, what happened to me. I just, I just thought that I ended up with a C-section because, of course I did, because, most women would, die in childbirth. And so thank God I was in this hospital that could save me from childbirth, And so, but, the C-section didn't sit right with me. It really was very traumatic for me. It really broke a part of me mentally and emotionally, and I didn't expect that. And so, as I was sobbing on the OR table, the doctor said to me, "Oh, stop crying. You can have a VBAC next time." And so I thought, when I got pregnant a year later, that he said I could have a VBAC, so I'm just going to do that then. And I had no idea how hard it would actually be to even have a VBAC with a provider who said, "Sure, I do those." I just really went my whole pregnancy thinking this is going to be the simplest thing ever. I just show up and they give me a VBAC because that's how this works.
Yeah.
Or that's how he said it worked anyway.
Yes.
And then I started to kind of, figure out what I didn't want to have happen to my labor, slowly but surely. And I went in, I didn't think we needed to talk about my birth plan until, later in the pregnancy. And so when I showed up at, 30-something weeks pregnant with my birth plan in hand, I handed it to my doctor and said, okay, here you go,
Yes.
here's what I'd kind of like to have happen this time, because some things that happened last time, yeah, those were not really fun, and so maybe no Pitocin this time, because Pitocin was really, to me, the turning point from where I went from the chance for a vaginal birth to that was the start of the C-section right there.
Yes.
And so, and then he sort of brushed it off, and he said, well, I'll get back to you at your next appointment. Oh, okay. And then he came back, and he had just, crossed everything out in my birth plan with red pen, just had taken a red pen and just butchered my birth plan. And when he handed it back to me and basically told me I couldn't do any of the things that I wanted to do, I panicked. And that's when I was like, oh no, this isn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. And then I just slowly started getting little pieces of information here and there. And what really changed everything for me is when I saw the business of being born.
Yeah.
And when I saw that cartoon with the cascade of interventions, and I saw just how scripted my whole first birth was, not by me and not by my baby, but by the hospital protocol, I was embarrassed. of course. I was ashamed that I didn't know better, and I was really angry about, what had happened to me. And so my husband and I watched together, and we decided, okay, we have to make this different this time.
Yes.
And so I immediately hired a doula who was a recommendation from a friend. And up until that point, my doctor had been telling me that most VBACs fail. He called it a trial of labor, which I think is sort of, that's the technical medical term for it. But I feel like it's, he sort of meant like, well, I'll let you try to have a vaginal birth, and I feel very Yoda about things. It's like there is no try, it's only do. You tell yourself you're going to do something, and he was more like, well, I'll let you give it a shot. But and the way he talked about it, it made it seem like I thought the uterine rupture rate was like 70%. That's what I thought, because the way he said it, he was really like, oh, well, only a third of women actually have a successful vaginal birth. So I took that to mean that 2/3 of women die in labor from it. I really had no idea. And then it was my doula at 37 weeks pregnant was the first person to say to me, did you know that the rupture rate is like less than 1%?
Yes. And
I said, I had no idea. And then she started putting the whole rupture thing in perspective for me and said, you have X chance of this, and happening before that would happen. And if something like that did happen, you would probably know. It's not like, most ruptures are not catastrophic. There's warning signs. It's not just something that all of a sudden your uterus explodes and kills everyone in the room, and because that's what I had in my head.
God, yeah.
And it was very, because I'm just a very dramatic person, and it's just, everything has to be extremes, in my head when I'm really fearful about something.
Yes.
And so, I wanted to get away from my provider. I hired my doula because insurance was telling me that I couldn't leave my provider. I was calling around, and nobody would take me. And, they said I couldn't leave anyway, and I was willing to pay out of pocket, but I couldn't find somebody. And so then I showed up in labor, and then I fought for 38 hours through this labor. It was, stalled because I was fighting. It was stalled because I had a really high-dose epidural, and I couldn't move, and I was panicked all the time. And they just kept insisting that I had to have a C-section, and I just kept insisting that I couldn't do it. There was something about it that felt so wrong to me.
Yes.
And I knew that if it felt like, okay, I really believe you, I believe that I need this to happen, then I would be okay with it, but I couldn't allow myself to be cut again. I was just so insistent that couldn't happen. And so, I fought through this 38-hour labor, had my VBAC, and it was the greatest thing that had ever happened to me, and I felt so triumphant. So, of course, I went to my blog and wrote it all out like I do everything, and I couldn't believe the response. The response to my VBAC story was people were simultaneously thrilled for me while also being completely outraged about what I had been put through.
Yes.
And it kind of went viral, and after it went sort of viral, and I had it remains today one of my most popular posts, 3.5 years later. And after I saw how many women were affected, and how many women had been through the same thing, I just couldn't stop talking about it. To me, it was like, wow, this is, what happened to me, I felt was really just criminal. Yes. What I'd been put through, how I'd been made to feel, I felt like it was truly abusive. And I was so sad by all the other women who had been put through the same thing, who had either, been put through the first, round of crazy interventions that ended in an unnecessary C-section, or, women who had been badgered into getting this or that. And I just decided that, I need to keep talking about this because I just would love to help other women not go through what I went through. And that's why I do, I still talk about it to this day.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and you've made such a huge difference, all of you, and just speaking about it. I mean, think about how many women out there are thinking it in their minds. They're feeling alone. They're feeling intimidated. I know Gina and I had this conversation earlier about just the whole idea of talking to your provider, feeling intimidated by what your physician is saying, and wanting to speak up, but then not being able to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's funny that, people know me as being sort of, belligerent sometimes and just loud, and I'll say anything, and, I'm pre-law because I can, I'm going to make a good lawyer. I'm good at, arguing with people. But when it came to my provider, I was scared of him. And I don't know why, but I just think that, he talked to me like lots of providers talk to women, where I have a medical degree, you don't.
Yes.
Therefore, I'm smarter, what I say goes.
Yes.
And never mind that we're talking about your body and your baby.
Yes.
You know, you're paying me for my expert medical opinion, and
Yes.
my 10 years of schooling trump anything that you've researched on the internet.
Yes.
And that's how I was made to feel, that if I'm finding information on my own, that it's not as good as whatever he was giving me. So I was being a bad mom. I was being irresponsible by asking questions.
Yes.
And so I just shut my mouth, and I didn't argue. And then I learned later that, a good provider is going to want to talk to you about your feelings about things. They're going to want you to have done your own research. They're going to want you to take some personal responsibility for your birth rather than, come to me
100%.
and I'll give you a birth.
Yeah. Your provider is your partner. And, it's funny, I'm a nurse midwife, and my best friend is an OBGYN, and we have these conversations all the time, and she says, I just don't understand these women who will walk into a physician's office and allow them to be taken over. My patients are I'm partners with my patients. It's their birth, and she's very unique, obviously. Being best friends with a midwife, she has to be, but but she's just one, there are physicians out there. It's not just, you can see a midwife, but there are physicians out there who do take that philosophy as, I am your partner in this, I have the expertise, I can educate you, and then ultimately we're going to make this decision together because it's your body. And I think that's one of the things that clearly you want to look for, is that kind of attitude. It's not that you need to have all the medical information. That's not the training that you need to have going into this. I can speak for my own practice. I told most of you guys, and a lot of people don't know this, that when I was in practice, when I opened my medical practice as a midwife, I opened the practice myself, and I hired a physician to work for me. It was a very different type of practice, obviously, since I was the employer, and that made it wonderful for my patients. It was more than, it was not for my ego that I did this. It was really knowing that that the only way that I was going to be able to provide the type of midwifery care that I ultimately wanted to provide was to hire a physician to be my backup and be in the practice. And so I never transferred anybody. They stayed in my care. The gestational diabetics, the twins, the high-risk patients, the breech delivery, everybody stayed with me. And then if we needed to have him in the room, he would be there for backup. And it was a wonderful, wonderful 7 years. And I know my patients truly appreciated the continuity that they received. And then there was one thing I wanted to say was that, and I think Jill will concur with me on this, that, it's not really about how do we give birth, because there are times where C-section is, thank God we're able to do it. I mean, that there's medical necessity, and there's times where we've really tried everything, or there is a medical emergency that we are very grateful that we have the ability to be able to do that and save the life of a mother and a baby. But unfortunately, like so many things in obstetrics, it's been overused, and the liability has taken over common sense and common practice and respect for women. And so it's unfortunate. It's something that I was seeing, not as much as I'm seeing now. This was already, I haven't done deliveries in 7 years, and back then, I mean, I did so many VBACs in my practice, and it didn't seem to be as big of an issue as it seems to be now. What would you say is that, I mean, my thoughts are that it's really the liability and the insurance companies that are really pushing the hospitals to not do this type of procedure. Does anybody want to comment about that?
May I comment on that?
Yeah. Who's that? Is that Jill?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I think a lot of people get started in advocacy, and there's so many advocates popping up on the internet and whatnot. Everyone is very hyper focused on like the microsystems and the provider-patient relationship.
Yes.
And really, it's important. It's an important thing to focus on, especially when you're dealing with issues that with specific women coming to you and asking for help.
Yes.
But yeah, healthcare reform and payment reform and insurance reform. I mean, these are huge issues, and these issues are not specific to maternity care by any means. And well, the show's called My Baby Experts. I'm definitely not an expert in this, but
Yes.
I think looking at the macro level kind of sheds a new light on everything.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and what you're talking about, too, with types of provider, and really it comes down to, I think, valuing finding a provider that values that shared decision-making process, because, there are a lot of midwives that, I don't want to say a lot, there's some midwives that don't, and there's some doctors who don't, and there are a lot that do, and a lot of them found me on the blog, and we're happy to say that they are not the typical, or that they do value that shared decision-making process. So.
Yeah. I think that one of the things that is important, and especially, I mean, for anyone, whether they're having their first baby, they're planning a VBAC, they're having their second, let's face it, I mean, with 1/3 of all births in the country being cesarean, and in my state, unfortunately, I'm here in New Jersey, and it's almost 50%, I believe we're almost at that point. It's ridiculous. Everyone who's pregnant or planning to have a baby is at risk for facing this situation one way or another, and I think that it's important to help people to know what kind of questions that they want to ask beforehand. How do you screen? How do you understand that your provider works for you, and you have an opportunity to ask those questions throughout your pregnancy? People come in now into the store, they know what I used to do, they know my background, they'll come in after a C-section that they're unhappy with the outcome, and they'll say, Shara, what could I have done, what could I have said, this is what happened, here's the scenario, what do you think I would, and my answer is there's really not much that you can do in labor without fighting. I mean, like Gina said, she really had to fight, and that was not an easy thing to do, right, Gina, to fight during your labor?
No, I would not recommend it to anybody ever. I mean, if you have no other choice,
yes.
Stand up for yourself. But I think it's almost impossible for a woman, a female mammal to give birth.
That's right.
In that kind of stressful environment, and
That's
she
right.
shouldn't have to. So I tell moms now, yes, I did it. I wouldn't recommend it.
Yes.
Find yourself a better provider.
Yes.
Long before I did.
Yeah, and doing it before the delivery, and people ask, when is it too late? Like, oh, well, I'm already 36 weeks, I'm already 37 weeks, I guess I have no choice, this is what I have to do. And my answer to them, they used to call me to transfer at 37, 38 weeks, and the question was, is it too late to come? And I would say, literally ask them, is the baby out? And if the baby's not out, it's not too late. Just come on over, And I can't tell you how many late transfers that I had, and just in those couple weeks, or just 2, 3, 4 visits of getting to really know someone where I spent time with them. They got to know me better, and I got to know them better, and what they were and who they were as women and what their desires were in just those few short visits than they had had in their entire pregnancy with the provider that they were with. And we had some beautiful births and VBACs, and just such an accomplishment for them. And I think this is a really big issue or concept that I want to bring across, is that it is not too late to transfer. If your baby's not out, even if you're late all the way at the end of the pregnancy, and you're having those thoughts right now as you're sitting here listening to us having this conversation, going, that's me. I don't feel good right now. I don't feel comfortable. My doctor is not taking time with me even during the prenatal visits. They're not answering the questions the way I want to be have them answered. They're not listening to me. It's not going to get better in labor. Would you agree?
Yeah, it is not going to get better in labor.
It's not going to get.
My anecdotal evidence that will tell you anything. I will say it will only get worse in labor because, any woman who's ever been through labor before, which is all, VBAC candidates have been through it before probably,
yes.
You know that once you get into the hospital, it's really hard to advocate for yourself. I mean, and, you can a lot of women hire a doula, and some under the mistaken impression that the doula can do all the advocating for you, and certainly a doula can help. And I recommend that all VBAC moms have a supportive birth team, especially a doula.
Mm-hmm.
But no one can protect you from a provider. No one can.
No.
Not your husband, not you in labor, because you're in labor land.
That's right.
And certainly, not a doula or anybody else. So yes, it'll be worse. But however, having said that, not all hope is lost if you can't transfer
Yes.
for whatever reason. I've seen women in my own ICAN group who have showed up at hospitals with a VBAC ban, an actual policy against a VBAC, which we all know is technically illegal, but hasn't been challenged yet.
Yes.
And they've walked into those hospitals and had a VBAC
Yes.
simply by refusing the interventions, which is their legal right.
Yes.
And again, you don't want to have to bring a lawyer with you when you go into labor. So, find a provider that that will support your decisions first. But if you're in a bad position where you just can't, if there aren't any available to you, I want women to know that they do have legal rights, protecting their right to decide what happens to their own body.
Right.
And so, if you need to pull those out, then by all means, bring them to bring a printout to the hospital with you if you have to, and make sure your birth team is there to help hold your space and do what you need to do.
That's such a huge point that you just made. Your birth team, your partner, your doula. In the last few years in my practice, if you wanted me to do your delivery, it was a must that you had to hire a doula. Your midwife is not your doula. There is a difference between a midwife and a doula, and you need both to help support you in most cases. And especially if you're going to a physician that is not going to be around during the labor process, will come in to kind of catch at the end. You do need somebody to advocate for you and to do the conversation. You had brought up the concept of, as mammals, the worst thing that you could do is fight in labor. And there's really a physiological response that takes place when we, as mammals, when we get into that fight or flight response, which occurs when we get anxious, when we get into an argument. Adrenaline is released in our body, and adrenaline is a complete antagonist to oxytocin, which is the hormone that helps us to labor and birth. And so, of course, this is not going to help your labor in any way if you have to stand there with your plan and fighting for everything that you want. It's pretty amazing that you were able to get the VBAC that you had, Gina, considering everything you had to go through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it is. To this day, as I hear more and more stories, at the time I just really thought, if you work hard enough, if you fight hard enough, everyone can have their VBAC.
Yes.
And then as I learned more and more about, I'm just shocked that my body was even able to complete the birth process, given how much stress I was under.
Yes.
Now that I know about the physiological process of birth, and how fighting, can literally stop your labor.
Yes.
And now that I see more and more women who've had to go through the same thing that I went through, and they weren't able to fight for themselves because it just was so impossible. And I really feel bad for all those women that have been in those situations and didn't get the outcome that I did. I feel incredibly lucky that I did get my VBAC in the hospital, given the situation I was in.
Yeah, totally. Let's answer a couple questions here. I have some really. My audience is the best. They're the smartest, most inquisitive audience that you've ever met, and they send me questions, and then they go, "Hey, you didn't answer my question." So let's get on to some questions. I left enough time for this show so we can really get to them. The first question that came in is from Holly in Maryland. And Holly is asking, what can we do to put pressure on doctors to change their ways of being so afraid of VBAC deliveries? How do we as individuals spread the word about VBAC safely to our surrounding communities who may not have access to the internet? Very good question. Desiree, do you want to take that one?
Sure. I know.
I'm going to call on you.
How do you spread the word? I know. I think the best thing to do is to join some online communities.
Mm-hmm.
I know ICAN has forums. There's a Yahoo group. There's also local online communities.
Mm-hmm.
Be in touch. Follow Jill.
Mm-hmm.
Follow Gina. But really, the best way to do it is to talk to childbirth educators, talk to doulas, find out who the friendliest practitioners are. Investigate out of hospital birth as well.
Yes.
Look at all your options. And also, we can't we can know all the evidence in the world, but we have to reach people's hearts first before they're going to listen.
Yes.
So it's really about approach and just sharing information, sharing your story.
Yes.
Having other women who've had VBACs share their stories.
Yes.
Women who've had, great vaginal births overall share their stories as well as the struggles. So you're kind of counterbalancing the fear that we have in our culture about birth. I mean, Gina spoke about that really tremendously, what she experienced herself.
Yes.
And, so I think it's really sharing the positive stories, what we can do. I also posted a link on the little chat window, a bunch of different ways to be an advocate.
Great.
And there's some great information from the advocacy page on the ICAN website.
Yes.
It just gives you some starting point ideas, as well as the VBAC policy database.
Yes.
So I think really just finding people to connect with in our birth networks as well that are like-minded, and go meet with the nurses. Be bold. Go meet with the nurse manager and talk to her. They have a lot of actual power in the hospital when they're looking at what moms can do on the labor and delivery floor.
Yes.
Meet with the OBs. Call and ask them to coffee. They'll meet with you. Generally, people don't talk to them as seen as human beings. So, we'd like to be treated as human beings, not just a uterus, not just a scarred uterus, or a hostile environment for a baby. So oftentimes if we treat the care provider as a human being as well, it can change them from the inside out. And if it doesn't, that's a great big red flag. And you may want to consider moving on to another provider, even if it's difficult.
That's a great point, and I talk so much about that when it comes to pediatric care when you're talking to your pediatrician, but this starts right with your obstetrician or your midwife, whoever that is, in finding out, are they open to the conversation, and that's going to give you a real good window into who they are. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it can also kind of give you insight on your own philosophy, because we have to listen to our gut instinct. We have to listen, to really what's going on in our body. Our logical mind will follow.
Yes.
But we actually make decisions, kind of in our gut, in our heart,
Yes.
And we need to really listen to those. And when we do that, we end up making the very best decisions for us and our family.
We do know what's right for us. There is an inner voice that we have, and especially as women, our intuition is there. And I think that so much anxiety, confusion, uncertainty comes from hearing that inner voice telling us something that's right for us, and hearing all the external forces pushing against it. That's what causes so much of the anxiety as a mother or as an expectant mother. We have an innate knowing for ourselves of what we want and what's good for us. And that's not the same from person to person. And I find that with everything when it comes to pregnancy, birth, parenting, whatever the case is, and you really need to listen to that inner voice. We've suppressed it so much in the thoughts of we really don't know, I've never done this before, how would I know the right decisions for me? But there is an instinct that does kick in here that tells us what's right for us in the end, and you need to listen to it. You really need to listen to it. Jill, let's talk for a second about, the statistics that we're seeing, because they're alarming.
It's funny that I was just about to piggyback off of what Des said. I definitely agree wholeheartedly that we need to make decisions for ourselves that feel right and everything else. I found when I was, if I could talk about me for a minute, I found that what was lacking in my prenatal visits was data. I get, especially when they started talking about C-sections, I couldn't get, with any other kind of, it feels like, by the way, I like surgery. I've had lots of surgeries. I kind of enjoy the whole journey, and so I want to point out the irony there that, every time I had a surgery, there was some kind of, a percentage. Well, there's a 15% chance that this will, and I didn't get that, and I just thought that was strange, and I think that might have been part of what prompted me to start researching, because all I heard was the worst case scenario, which did nothing for me. So I was like, well, what are my odds?
Yes.
Well, I've seen, this is the answer I got. Well, I've seen, that shoulder stosis and they were bad, and this can happen. And I know there are a lot of pregnant listeners. I don't want to go nuts with it, but I was like, well, that sounds awful. That's really, really horrible, and I'm horrified that could happen to me. But what are the odds? And so it's the numbers to me. It's the rational decision-making process is equally, if not more important than the intuitive process for me. And I think that's what's lacking. For me, is there's no transparency in data, and that's why I'm totally intrigued with, trolling health websites, state's public health websites, and digging through the proverbial dumpster for, whatever they have, whether it's hospital discharge data or if they, make the rates available, just to find out. Because I think, and it kind of in too to Desiree's, question about, or the question that you answered, Desiree, about changing mindsets on VBAC. I think if people saw, my thinking is that if people actually, and I could be completely wrong, that, we do all this information, people go, get it all out there, and people go, I don't care.
Yeah, yeah.
50, but these cigarettes, well, it's not 75. Who cares? Are people happy? Who cares?
Yes.
I think if people could actually see some of the numbers and percentages, and if we could get those for all 50 states, it might look at things a little bit differently, and maybe that would trickle down.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
well,
I have no idea.
Is that something that you have on your website, or a place where we can go to find that you can recommend?
Yeah, actually, theuncesarean.com, if you look on the left-hand sidebar, there's a cesarean rates by hospital, and that has, I don't even know, I think
Joe
now?
You know what, Joe will post it on our resource page, and we'll put it on the chat line, and then we'll put it on our resource page for anybody who watches the replay, so we'll be able to link to it. Joe's telling me that that I have Lynn Wolf here, so I'm going to log her in for a second. Hold on, you guys. We'll be back to you, okay? Hi, Lynn.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, good. Hold on a second. Let me get the audio going. Are we good, Taylor? Yeah? Are you there, Lynn?
I'm here.
Oh, so nice for you to join us. I know you only have a little short time, but I'm so glad that you were able to come on and talk to us tonight. It was a perfect episode.
Thanks for having me. I apologize for my raspy voice. I'm just getting over being sick.
That's okay. We forgive you. We're just happy you're here. Lynn Wolf is the director, the marketing director for My Best Birth and for The Business of Being Born. And everybody was in the chat log here talking about how much they loved the movie, and we were all discussing what a wonderful movie it was, and what an inspiration, and how grateful we are that it was made. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's going on and how things are progressing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, as you may have heard, that Ricky and Abby have made a 4-part follow-up DVD series to The Business of Being Born, which is called More Business of Being Born. DVD pretty much concentrates on more or less one area. So the first DVD in the series is Down on the Farm, Conversations with legendary midwife Ina May Gaskin.
Awesome.
Excuse me.
It's okay.
So that's really neat. It basically covers Ina May Gaskin. Ricky and Abby went down to the farm, and they got to chat with Ina May and learn all about everything that they've been doing, and it's really amazing.
Yes.
And then the next film in the series is Special Deliveries, Celebrity Mothers Talk Straight on Birth. So some of you may have seen online we have the celebrity webisode where you just barely got to preview some celebrity birth stories. This DVD is going to feature the birth stories of several celebrity moms, including Alanis Morissette and Giselle Bündchen and Melissa Joan Hart and several others. You can see who all is going to be on the DVD on our website.
Yeah. Awesome.
And then we've got they've got one coming called Explore Your Choices, Birth Center Doulas and C-Sections.
Okay.
So obviously that's going to cover quite the spectrum there. And then finally, the VBAC dilemma, what your options really are.
Wow.
The fourth film in the series. So
Wow.
they're not sequential, but we're just sort of releasing. We're all going to release at once on October 11th to DVD.
Wow.
But starting in the middle of this month, people are able to hold grassroots screenings in their towns of the first 2 films in the series. So you'll be able to, and then we'll also be having them stream online for a week at a time.
Awesome. Well, we're definitely going to be doing one here at the center at our place. So for all the New Jersey moms, I know they're going to be excited about that this summer.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a lot of film, but everybody's very excited. It's going to be absolutely fantastic and a lot of information. But that's why there's 4 of them. They just couldn't put everything in one. So
There's just too much to cover, and the work is too important, and they've done such an amazing job of really getting it out to the mainstream, to everyone, to really see the realities of what's happening and be able to empower mothers to make different choices. And I can't imagine how many lives they have changed and touched and impacted.
absolutely, myself included. And I mean, it's such an honor to work with Ricky and Abby, and you know, to be able to help and promote their work for sure.
Lynn, thank you for joining us. I know you only had a short time, but I'm happy that you were able to jump in for a moment and speak to us and describe all the exciting stuff that's going on.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Everybody, I hope you have a great night.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for being here. Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Do I have...
Hello, Gina, I'm here.
Okay, good. You guys are back. All right, awesome, excellent. Yes, you know, as we're speaking about what we can do to support, you know, I wanted to show a quick video from ICAN about volunteering for ICAN. Desiree, would that be okay if we show that video right now?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for doing that.
No problem. Let's do that. Let's go to the ICAN video. This is a way to help support ICAN by volunteering. I just thought it was a great video, and we should all take a look at it. Awesome. That was a great, great video. Awesome. And it really gave, I just thought that was such a beautiful video, Desiree, to be able to show everybody ways that they can volunteer, make a difference, and be a part of the community. So awesome. Thank you so much for that.
I'm just very excited you get to share with so many people.
Yeah, no,
There's
it's
always more work to do. We are an all-volunteer organization, so it's always helpful to have more hands. Smaller mom-sized bites of activism and advocacy.
That's right. That's right. Awesome. Let's go back to our conversation here. Jill and I were going to talk a little bit about the whole idea of, a birth is a birth, right, Jill? No matter how you look at it, whether it's a C-section, whether it's a vaginal delivery, there's empowerment can mean different things to different people of what it is that what they find to be the thing for them. I can tell you that it was very important to me when I was in practice. I had, I think, about an 8% C-section rate in my practice, and I was a midwife. I mean, there are people who needed C-sections for whatever reason there was, and it was extremely important that after every single birth, I would go back the next day and I would talk to my clients and I would say, how do you feel? How do you feel about the whole experience? What are you happy? Do you feel complete? Do you feel empowered? And 100% of the time, the answer was a big smile and an absolute yes. We did everything we could, and I feel completely empowered. I felt completely part of the experience, and I gave birth to my child. And so it is not only about having a vaginal birth. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. And that's wonderful that way, too, after seeking midwifery care from you, because, they were probably most likely looking for a vaginal birth. So
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
that they felt that way afterwards.
Yes. Yes.
I know you and I got to talk a little bit too about how the whole concept of empowerment and accomplishments and everything are very subjective, and it's very different for people. And I think one of the things that has bothered me most in the last couple of years, if you don't mind me venting on your show, Sherry.
No, go ahead.
Because here I go. No,
go ahead. It's an open forum here. Go ahead, Jill.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Someone put it one time on, I think it was, people were talking about, birth, and someone wrote something to the extent of, well, but if she's happy with it, right? I roll, with a little sarcastic, emoticons. And I thought, oh my God, this is such a different mindset for me. And I realized then that, the whole name Cesarean, it's clever and all, but, I really wish there were a way to work in an unwanted. Because, it's,
yes.
My goal is preventing, unwanted C-sections. Because if you want one, it's a completely different issue.
Yes.
You should be probably pretty well supported in today's environment in getting that, but I hear that, sometimes you're not. But I think it comes back to, really, pregnancy is probably, if you look at all of the, preference-sensitive conditions out there, she's kind of the ultimate one because there are a lot of different elements involved. It touches on, with bodies, which we know how society views that, and, and there's pain involved, and some people want it, or some people aren't, and some people are in between, and some people don't know. And,
yes.
So I just want to, it's just say that it's all very subjective.
Yes.
And it's in the beholder. And a beautiful birth, my friend just had a beautiful repeat C-section birth, to a beautiful baby boy on Friday, and I'm really happy.
Yeah.
So
yes.
It comes down to the person and the individual involved.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, and I think that's so missing in the conversation. It's become so polarized, whether it's, having a natural birth, having a C-section, having an epidural. It's really so individual to the person's desires, and really what it comes down to is supporting women to make the choices that they feel good about. I had somebody even tonight on my Facebook wall realized what the topic was, and she said, I won't be joining tonight because I've already planned my repeat C-section and I feel good about it, so I don't need to hear this conversation. And I responded back to her and I said, oh, please join us. This is exactly what the conversation is about. It's about supporting you in a non-judgmental way. This is not about convincing anybody to do something that they're not comfortable with. In fact, we would be just as guilty as the people who are forcing people to have unwanted cesareans if we were forcing them to have unwanted vaginal repeat deliveries. I don't see much of a difference there. When you look at the word midwife, and a lot of people don't know what that translates to, the word midwife translates to with woman. Does not translate to natural birth. It does not translate to vaginal birth. It translates to with woman. And that was my philosophy through my entire practice was, I'm here to serve you, I'm here to support you, I'm here to educate you, and then to empower you to make the choices that are right for you and not convince you to do something else. And it saddens me even when I hear people who said, I really, in the end, I really did want to have an epidural and my midwife wouldn't let me have it. And I thought, that's not right either. We all have the choices that we should be making for ourselves, and no one should be telling us what to do in any sort of way. So I appreciate your comment, and I'm on the same page with you of complete choice. Freedom of choice is basically what it is. Yeah, beautiful and well said. Thank you. How about a few more questions? You guys want to do some more questions? Let's see here. I have a question. Let's see. I think I'm going to answer this question here. This is a question that this just jumped out at me when I saw it. It was from Gabriella in New Jersey. Gabriella asks, is it truth that if your cervix is small, you have to have a C-section? And how can I know if I have a small cervix or not? Well, Gabriella, let's put an end to this myth. No, there is absolutely no medical indication that if you have a small cervix, and I'm not even sure who's telling you your cervix is small, that you need to have a C-section. Cervixes are small when they're not dilated. Everybody's cervix is small, and that does not mean that you will not dilate in labor or that your baby will not be able to fit through the pelvic canal there. So no, the answer is no to that answer, and to that question, and all it's going to do is create fear if somebody's actually putting that into your mind. Wouldn't you guys agree that so much of this is about fear-mongering, like just really like getting people scared, telling you you're going to have a big baby, telling you have a small pelvis, telling you you're too short, your feet are too square, I've heard all of it, right? That you won't be able to.
Yeah, you're always too. I'm sorry, Sherry.
That's okay. What were you going to say?
Desiree.
Yes.
Yeah, you're always too something. We talk about the too skinny, too fat, too old, too young, too short.
That's
too
right.
tall.
That's right. Everybody's too something. And it really, even as a midwife, it took a lot for me to put my own judgments aside. I remember so many times walking into a patient room, and this is more when I was doing my clinic deliveries and I didn't get to meet people before the birth, and I would walk in, and even to put my own assessments aside of like, wow, this person's only 4'10" and this baby looks about 10 pounds. Like, how is this going to fit? and not letting it show on my face and not letting it affect my care, and understanding through time and time again of watching women incredibly birth their babies that they can birth till they cannot birth. You need to trust it till it doesn't happen. And there were so many times that I thought maybe this is not going to work, and they surprised the hell out of me. So I've been able to put that aside and to always believe that you are able to birth until you can't, and everybody should be given the chance. In the absence of a disease process, in the absence of like uncontrolled diabetes, where you've grown a baby that's just bigger than it should have been, or something completely wrong, the chances that your body would grow a baby that's just too big for you to deliver is so rare. Think about that in nature. Think about that as how we have evolved. It just doesn't make sense that we would do that to ourselves, and yet 50% of us cannot deliver, or a third of us. Well, if you're in New Jersey, you have even more genetic issues, I guess. But it even speaks back to the whole breastfeeding issue, which obviously has become more of my topic these days, is that to think that we can grow these babies and then we can't feed them, we are just not using common sense. It's not logical. It doesn't make sense. And it has become such a medical process that has just been taken over, not only by the doctors, but by the insurance companies. And I really think that's where a lot of this is stemming from. So,
this is Gina. Can I interject?
Of course, go right ahead.
I just wanted to piggyback off that too and say, in speaking about, choosing a provider and talking about, assessing risk, you know, what we're finding so much with moms going for VBAC is that, you know, they start out the pregnancy with a provider that's totally supportive, and
Yes.
then as the pregnancy starts to progress, what we find are providers that we call them bait and switch. And really what that meant was, you know, you go in and they say, oh, yeah, sure, you can have a VBAC, no problem, and you don't get into specifics. But then all of a sudden, as time goes on, they start planting seeds of doubt. And this is where you have totally rational thinking women who, you know, use logic every day of the week, who all of a sudden start believing that their bodies are broken, that you know, they grow a baby that's too big, or that, you know, X amount of fluid is all of a sudden wrong, or, you know, I'm measuring a week ahead, this must mean, you know, I can't be back. All of these little tiny seeds of doubt that are planted along the way that will convince a normally, you know, rational thinking woman who, you know, to all of a sudden agree to something that she, you know, didn't want, or, you know, show up in labor and so easily be convinced that a VBAC is not in, you know, in the game for her.
Yes. Yes.
And we see it so often, and it's, you know, and it's, I don't like to do the mother blaming when, you know, a mom just doesn't know any better, because we're so conditioned in our society to believe all of these bad things about our bodies. You know, we're told that women can't make breast milk. You know, we're told, all of our friends and family. I mean, there are women that grew up in a culture of, you know, breastfeeding women, but I certainly was not one of them. I was told that, you know, that's gross and women don't do that, and so of course I figured women don't do that. Same thing with birth. Even though my mother is less than 100 pounds soaking wet, and I've always known that I was born 9 pounds 2 ounces, and I came out of her. Yet the way it was told to me, it was this horribly traumatic thing. I nearly broke her in half, and so all of those seeds that were planted in me, you know, from childhood, and they are in so many of us. And so when a provider comes along and starts planting little seeds of doubt in you about your body's ability or inability to handle this process, especially when you're a VBAC mom and you've already had a C-section that maybe you didn't want, you know, you're already feeling like, well, it failed the first time, you know, quote unquote failed. So why would it work the second time? So it's so much easier to convince those women that there's something wrong with them.
I had somebody.
And so that's when you really that's when you really have to start looking at, if, you know, you're going with a provider who says they're going to give you a VBAC, that's when you have to look at their statistics and find out what is their rate of VBAC, what is their rate of C-section, repeat C-section, how often do they do these things, how often do they use, you know, epidurals and Pitocin and all these other things, and that's where statistics can really help you choose a provider based on real hard data rather than, you know, just saying, oh, I'll let you, and then we'll see how things go.
Absolutely. And I think that some of that information is available in the hospitals, too. I mean, I know that we were given our statistics in the hospital. I don't know if it's like public, if you're able to get the information, but it's something that you should ask. And for most physicians, they will pretty much tell you the truth if you ask them the question. Yeah. I had somebody in here just this week. Go ahead. It's okay. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, Virginia is the only state that has provider-level statistics available.
Oh, okay. Okay.
On the internet.
Oh, yeah. All right. I wonder if you can go to. I wonder if you can go to the. I wonder if you can go to the hospitals and ask about the different providers in that particular hospital. I'm not sure if that's possible or not. It might be HIPAA violations, or who knows at this point. But you know, it's something that you definitely want to be asking.
I've never heard of being able to attain it, but
yeah. I had somebody come in just to piggyback on that. I had somebody come into the store this week and say that, you know, they're thinking about doing a C-section on her. It's a VBAC that she wants to have, and the provider told her that if she gained more than 15 pounds this pregnancy, that she wouldn't be able to VBAC. And I just, you know, it's just one of those things. It's like setting somebody up for failure. She goes, I've already hit 15 pounds. What does that mean? Does that mean I won't be able to be back? And this was not an overweight person. This is not, I mean, like, to give these kind of parameters, who's making that up? I said, I've never heard that before. This is, you need to find somebody else. This is the writing on the wall that we should be looking for. So I want to show a couple pictures. I never get an opportunity to show pictures of me and my clients from years ago. I have some nice beautiful pictures. And Joe, could you get the letter from my desk? I think I
Sure.
left it on my desk. I want to read you a beautiful letter that I had gotten from one of my clients who VBAC'd with me many, many years ago. Babies probably, I have people come in now with their 14-year-olds and their 12-year-olds, and they're like, "You delivered him." The poor boy is not that happy to talk about it or hear anything about it, but it's exciting for me. And this was one particular. Let me show a few pictures here. Here's one. Oh, I miss those times. It was a wonderful time of being able to. That's my niece, actually. I delivered my sister's baby.
Aw.
Yeah, that was a wonderful experience. And that's my doula, Mary, right there.
Oh.
She was actually the doula in my pregnancy. Those were twins that I delivered. Look how young I look. Oh, my God, Joe. Okay, awesome. I really want to share this letter. I've held on to this letter for all these years. It's just something that touched my heart so much. This is a letter from a woman named Cheryl, and she was one of my clients who had gone to see her physician that had done her original C-section, and now she was pregnant with her second baby, and she had, verbalized from the beginning that she wanted a VBAC. And what was happening was she was told all throughout the entire pregnancy, okay, that's fine, you can VBAC. We'll talk about it as we get closer to the end. And this is very, very common. We'll talk about it as we get closer to the end. Let's not discuss the birth yet. We'll talk about, when we get closer to the end. And so the end finally came, and the end was 36 weeks, 37 weeks. And she finally brought it up again, and she said, look, I really want a VBAC. She had had a primary C-section the first time because he told her the baby was too big. And the baby turned out to be less than 8 pounds, and she had the C-section. So she had called me and transferred into my care at 37 weeks and wound up having a beautiful VBAC and wrote me this letter, and so I'm going to share it with you if that's okay. She wrote, Dear Sherry, as I reflect and think back 6 weeks ago to the night my daughter Elise was born, I feel my heart skip a beat and a tear come to my eye. Truly one of the most meaningful events of my life happened that night when she was born to me VBAC. When we discussed pain medications that night and how I wanted to try to do without it, I never thought I would actually achieve it. I also never knew I possessed that sort of strength. When I cried for an epidural, any other doctor would have given it to me, but knowing my wishes for a natural birth, you held me off and made me push on further than I ever believed I could. You have to understand the sort of negativity I was fighting. My prior doctor, as you know, and his disbelief that my body was capable of having a vaginal birth, let alone without pain medication. Even some family and friends felt as though I could not do this without an epidural. Through this experience, I have gained some sort of empowerment. I don't know how to describe it or what you call it. The inner strength, maybe. I feel complete, and I have a satisfying sense of accomplishment. Shari, I want to thank you again. It was your faith in me and in my body's abilities which helped me to achieve my most ultimate birth experience. It couldn't have gone any better than it did. My only regret is that I did not find you sooner in my pregnancy. Thank you for taking me into your practice at 37 weeks. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for helping me fulfill my dream birth. Most of all, thank you for believing in me and making me believe in myself as a woman. Sincerely, Cheryl. And it's really, I get a tear when I think about it because I remember the birth, and there were so many. And I hope that reading that and listening to that, this is a person that was no different than so many of you out there who are fearful of transferring late in the pregnancy or fearful of going for something that you may have been scared out of, or making decisions that you feel right for yourself. This is a person who stood up for herself and said, you know what, this is not what I really want. And when she came to me, I said, there are no guarantees, but we'll do the best we can. And she got what she wanted, and I'll never forget the first words out of her mouth when she delivered her baby that happened to be bigger than her first, by the way. She said, I did this. I actually did this, and I know that she'll carry that with her for the rest of her life. And I know, Gina, you had a similar experience. Was that true?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I told you this earlier, Sherry, that you can watch my home birth video, and even after having a vaginal birth last time, I still couldn't believe that I was going to be able to do it again. I just still was just so surprised, I guess, that I had done it, and I just cried for several minutes. Every time I opened my mouth to say, oh my God, I did it, I just kept crying, I did it, as though I had shocked myself yet again.
Yes.
And there's really nothing that can, for me, nothing that can replicate that feeling of triumph over birth. And I think that, women feel that way no matter what, how they give birth, hopefully. Yes. But I think especially VBAC moms, when you go through this whole pregnancy wondering if you're going to be able to pull it off, and then doing it, it's just one of the most magical feelings in the world. And, and I said at the end of my last, my hospital VBAC, I said, if I could give this feeling to women, I would do it. If I could just bottle it up and hand it to you, I would, because it's so incredible.
Yes, it is incredible. And, just having a baby in general is incredible, no matter how we give birth. And, again, it just comes back down to this was her goal, and she accomplished her goal. And whatever that is for you, you're going to feel that same satisfying, accomplished feeling of having that baby put in your arms. So, again, it really comes down to your choices, but when you have that goal in mind, there's nothing like accomplishment of that. Yeah, it's beautiful.
And Sherry, how nice it is that we can, in this country, to put it in perspective, how lovely that we have the privilege and the facilities available for the most part to be able to discuss choice.
Absolutely.
Because there are women that do not have access to midwifery or obstetrical care.
Absolutely.
Solely, that we can sit and discuss this. It's pretty amazing, really, when it comes down to it.
It's such a good point. I mean, we're sitting here talking about the negative statistics and all this, and then to, great point, Jill, to bring up the fact that, we do live in a country where there are so many options, and we do have choices, and we do have rights, and we can advocate for ourselves. And then we have amazing groups like ICAN and everybody else out there too, and the internet and information to be able to support ourselves. Yeah. Fantastic. You guys are amazing. This is great. Let's ask a few more. Let's answer a few more questions here. Let's see here. Maybe this is for Desiree. Maybe not. I don't know. The question is, you'll tell me. The question is, my OB broke my water before my delivery. And my son was a nuchal cord times 6. That means the cord was wrapped around the baby's neck. Scary. No complications, thank goodness. However, I later read that breaking the water can cause cord issues. Is that true? I'll be so paranoid with my next pregnancy about the cord. And I think that, just to answer that question, yes, breaking the water early can cause all kinds of complications, whether it's a cord accident like a prolapse, or if it can cause decelerations if the cord is wrapped around the neck. And then I know in your particular case, Desiree, it caused like a descent that caused some problems for your birth. Isn't that correct?
Yes. With my first son, though I didn't know many things, I'd attended some births with friends who had natural births, attended a birth center birth. I had helped with lots of things prior to the birth of my first. I had a very positive attitude towards labor and delivery. Mm-hmm. And I picked a provider with an 8% cesarean rate.
Yes.
Who had a 90% VBAC rate.
Yes.
And took out-of-hospital classes and did, as much homework as I knew how to do at the time.
Yes.
But the mistake I made was we went to the hospital when I was in early labor because I didn't know what a decreased fetal movement really was supposed to be like in labor.
Yes.
And, the nurse was like, come on down, let us just monitor you. So I went, and with the full intention of just going in, having a natural labor and having a baby, because that's what I wanted and that's what I thought was just how it went. So instead, the nurse made the decision, I found out much later, to keep me in labor and delivery, though it was an early labor, because we did not live near the hospital. Oh. There were plenty of places for us to go and walk around and even stay at a hotel nearby.
Yeah.
But she didn't give me the option, and I thought I had to stay. So she broke my water, and baby was 3 centimeters and above zero station, and she ended up with an asynclitic head and slightly transverse, like about partway through. And it was a very long and arduous labor. I ended up with 4 hours of pushing. My OB tried a vacuum extraction, and it didn't work, and I ended up having a cesarean and taking an epidural in the OR. It was really challenging. That wasn't, I felt like I really worked hard in that labor, and I really wasn't traumatized by that. I was just shocked.
Yeah.
But it did cause me to have my primary cesarean. I had a VBAC with my second, pretty no-nonsense.
Yes.
And then my third one, when I had a CBAC, I posted my story on the chat. The doctor broke my water without consent with direct babies, and I pushed for, 3.5 hours or so, unmedicated. I got there, 7 centimeters or something, and she broke my water, and I ended up back in her repeat cesarean, and that was kind of a big turning point in my life, and that really kind of woke me up as a mother and as a female, and kind of gave me the voice I have today. And it hasn't quieted. I don't see it happening, but yes, it can cause issues.
Yes.
And I have a particular pelvic type that I really need to keep my water intact. And the 2 labors were intact until baby was nice and low.
Yes.
And in a great position.
Yes.
They were really no-nonsense labors, and they were fairly easy for me to push out. So that made a difference for me. So it really can. Besides cord issues, it can really keep baby in a poor position.
Yes.
And make it almost impossible to rotate.
Yeah. What Desiree's talking about is that the baby came down in the wrong position with the head tilted in a position that was difficult to fit through the pelvis, and very rarely is there a reason to rupture membranes or break the water early on like that, or even towards the end. I find that it makes for a more difficult, painful labor when there's no cushion on the cervix. It just, people who come in with their water intact, with their membranes intact, have an easier, less painful contractions, and once the water is broken, there's always the risk of infection as well. So you really, unless there's a real necessity, which there rarely is, unless the baby's born in the sac, and at that point you want to break open the water, and I've done many like that. To break the water is not always the best practice. So yeah, good question, and then a good answer that we was a little different, but also important to hear. There was a question here. Let's see. Okay, I'm currently 40 weeks and 3 days, and I want to do a VBAC. I go back to the doctor tomorrow. Is there anything I should ask him? Or that I should be worried about? This is from Nicole in Florida. And anybody want to take this? No takers.
Desiree, I'll put in first.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know Gina had some answers to this too.
Yes.
Hopefully this question is geared that they've already had conversations. They're already in agreement about a VBAC, and now she's looking ahead to what next because she's over 40 weeks.
That's right.
I'm going to look at it that way because that's what it sounds like to me.
Yes.
Really the questions that are important to ask are, is an induction on the table instead of a simply repeat cesarean? When are they both comfortable with it? What other protocols can we put in place, say, physical profiles, etc., until they get to that date? I mean, is it 41 and a half weeks? Get to 42? Where is everybody's comfort level? And to really work with that individualized care for that mother and baby. Are her dates right? I mean, really they need to go back and inspect her date.
Yes.
And really talk about that.
Yes.
Make sure they haven't been moved ahead a week, which happens routinely with early ultrasounds.
Yes.
And to really investigate that. And then, go from there. And if she's not satisfied with the answer that she gets, then, really she can go and seek a second opinion from another provider.
Yes.
And that's really what I would say about that. Is I'm hoping that the conversations already took place, just they haven't. Mm-hmm. I know, Gina, you had some good suggestions about any questions to ask.
Most of my suggestions were actually written out, nice lists of things that people women can ask their providers. when going for a VBAC, but those are mostly, conversations to have early on when choosing a provider.
Yes.
It sounds like this mom maybe has already had that conversation and is now, looking past her due date. I would say, one thing to ask is if they are going to suggest induction, I would say, is there anything that you think I should try before agreeing to a medical induction?
Yes.
I don't think there's any really, natural induction as sort of quote-unquote for me, because there's really nothing natural about inducing labor in whatever way it happens, but there are certainly ways to help labor either progress or get established more naturally than the medical ways. So if, she's looking at either a scheduled repeat because she's hitting 41 or 42 weeks, she's getting pressure to either induce or do the C-section, I would say, well, what do you recommend? What else can I try?
Yes.
And look around for things like that. Because I know a lot of moms, once they sail past 40 weeks, start to get really worried about losing their VBAC or, losing the birth experience they want because they're going to face some additional pressures.
Yes.
And so that's one thing to do is, what can I do now? What can I do while I'm waiting for labor to start? And what can I do to maybe help ripen my cervix to just help the process along?
I'm gonna offer two suggestions that I use routinely in my practice when I was practicing. One is evening primrose oil. It's a supplement that I started all of my clients on around 36 weeks of pregnancy. It's oral. You take it. It's a prostaglandin releaser, so it helps to release prostaglandin at the cervix as well, which is what helps to ripen the cervix. It doesn't put you into labor, but my partner would always say to me, how come none of your patients go post-dates? And it was just they would show up in labor. Their cervixes were 100% effaced. They were starting to dilate, and you can actually break open the capsules while you're in labor and have your provider put the oil right onto the cervix during the pelvic exam, and it helps to really melt away the cervix. It's pretty amazing. Have you guys ever heard of evening primrose oil or seen people use it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really works great. And then the other thing, I'm very much into homeopathy. We had about 3 weeks ago, we had an episode on homeopathy. My sister is a classical homeopath, and I use a lot of homeopathy in pregnancy and also in labor. There's a remedy called caulophyllum, and that is a remedy that can help to support contractions. It can be used to induce labor in a very gentle, non-invasive way with no side effects, and it can also be used during labor when labor has slowed down. And I would highly recommend going that route versus the medical route or versus Pitocin, and I always use that prior to Pitocin in any of my deliveries, and it worked very successfully. So those are two things
I actually used that. This is Gina again.
Yes.
One of my midwives gave me that. I couldn't remember what it was called until you said it, but they gave me that in my labor because I had a very sort of start-stop, lazy kind of labor that was, maybe we will, maybe we won't, and I had a lot of prodromal labor. So that night, where we decided, okay, tonight's the night, things are getting established, but I was kind of having a hard time sticking with my rhythm.
Yes.
They gave me some homeopathy, and that worked because I had my baby. And I don't know if it did everything, but it certainly supported getting a good contraction pattern established. So that was great. And I also want to tell moms that red raspberry leaf. I know we tell moms, to drink teas and all that stuff, in the third trimester. I cannot say enough good things about red raspberry leaf. I fully believe that having taken red raspberry leaf I took it in capsule form, along with drinking all the teas and stuff. I took it every single day, along with my prenatal vitamins and all the other things I took. And I really, truly believe that is how I got to nearly 10 centimeters dilated without feeling a contraction.
Yes.
And I think it helped that I was in my third baby. But in my first 2 labors, I was screaming for an epidural at 2 centimeters.
Yes.
And in this last labor, I was dilated before I felt even what I would refer to as a painful contraction. And I never, and I'm not just some special woman that those kind of things happen to, because my first 2 labors were just very, very difficult and very painful. And with this third time, I was walking around 9 centimeters, laughing and joking and saying, "You're all lying to me. I cannot be 9 centimeters. Look at me. I'm talking to you. I'm laughing through contractions." And I think that my uterus is in such good shape because of the red raspberry leaf, but that's maybe why I have Janine's time.
the red raspberry leaf is a uterine toner, and it does help to the contractions be more effective when you do have them. So you'll have a shorter labor. They'll be more effective. It'll also help to prevent postpartum bleeding, to help the uterus contract better after delivery. And then couple that with the primrose oil, and it's a great combination. And then the cauliflower, of course. Somebody's asking in the chat room if the evening primrose oil has any effect on a C-section scar, and the answer to the question is no. It will have no effect on your scar, so there's no worry there. I want to show you, this is a kit that I get from, this is a childbirth kit. It's a homeopathic kit, and in here are remedies that one of them is cauliflower, but then there's a whole bunch of little remedies here. This is what homeopathy looks like, and these are remedies that are specific. This kit is specific for childbirth, and this was the kit I used to keep in my locker in the hospital to use on my clients, and I highly recommend that if anybody's interested to get themselves a kit. The kit will work well for pregnancy, for labor, postpartum issues. It has remedies for breastfeeding in there. I actually import them from England because that's really the best place that we can get these kits from, but I do sell them here in the store if anybody's interested in it. It has cauliflower in it as well as some others. There's remedies like pulsatilla that help to turn a breech baby, that can also help with a transverse presentation like what Desiree was talking about. It's just really amazing. Go back a couple weeks and watch the episode with my sister where you had that split screen of her and I. We look very much alike talking about homeopathy if you want to get a better understanding of what it does. But it's really great medicine. It's really all we use for ourselves and for our children. So I love it for birth. Whenever I can find something that works in birth, in obstetrics, that can help you and not harm you, which is really unusual to find, go for it. Okay, there's not much out there that can help you and not harm you, and this is just one of those things. So it's it was a good thing to be able to bring up. Yes, go ahead.
Very right. And one other thing I have seen work amazing, especially for VBAC moms, is to get with a good perinatal chiropractor who specializes
thank you.
in
Thank
pregnancy,
you.
postpartum, families.
Yes.
Because I've seen it take a really wonky VBAC labor and get that mom adjusted, and along with the use of the cauliflower and some other homeopathy, and some essential oils really get things reorganized and get a labor back where it needs to be, or even prior, to help her get adjusted and go into labor when she needs to.
No,
so,
thank you. It's a great point. I highly endorse that and recommend it and agree with it. And I had chiropractic care through both my pregnancies, and I believe that it helped me to have very, very easy deliveries. I had long labor with my first, but easy births, and the second one I had a 27-minute labor from beginning to end. So I was very lucky with that second one. She kind of fell out, the second baby. So yeah, it was a great experience. I got to see it both ways, I think. Sometimes a little overwhelming when it goes that fast as well. So, you're careful what you wish for, I guess. We had such a wonderful conversation, and it was so nice to have a nice long episode so that we could take our time and really give everybody as much as we gave them. So I want to appreciate you all for that and acknowledge you all for that. But is there anything left that you are burning to say that you'd like to tell everybody?
This is Gina. I just want to say, just tell moms out there who are yearning for a VBAC, don't give up. If you feel like you're hitting a wall at every turn, that you can't find a provider, in your area that's going to support you, really reach out to ICAN, reach out to your local doula community. They're going to have, they've got their feet on the ground and their ears to the ground and can tell you who, what some secret provider that might be able to help you. So, and then at the end of the day, when you've done everything you can, you've taken your childbirth classes and you've looked for your provider, then hopefully you can come to terms with, however the birth does turn out, and, know that you've done what you can. But I say don't give up until you've exercised all your resources.
Yeah, beautifully said. Thank you so much, Gina. It really is so true, and I think that just the words, hearing it from you, somebody who was successful at this, you're an inspiration for so many people, and I honor you for that. So thank you, thank you. Anybody else want to say anything before?
Now, this is Desiree,
Yes.
and I just want to thank you very much, for allowing me to be part of the discussion tonight.
Yes.
And I also wanted to echo what Gina was saying. I ended up having a CBAC after having a VBAC already. And, don't give up. I went on to have another VBAC with my youngest son.
Yes.
It was a no-nothing. I started labor at 8 centimeters and had very similar to what Gina was saying. It was a very different labor for me than my other one.
Yes.
And, keep looking. There's almost always options out there. You just need to keep turning rocks over. I had this conversation with a woman in my office this afternoon about looking at a full spectrum, and I said, now you need to leave and think about many more things. That's not why you came here today, but that's what you're leaving me with.
Yes.
And, but it really gave her and her husband some serious pause about what the expectations were on them and how different her care was turning out through the course of this second pregnancy of hers. And, so it's interesting. I really say, keep on going. Reach out until you get information that you need.
Oh, it's fantastic. Thank you. And you know what? Thank you for coming on the show, Desiree. You're just, again, an inspiration for so many people. And the organization that you are the president of and that you're running is just unbelievable. The more I learn about it, the more I stand behind you. But I wanted to give Jill one last comment or thought if she wanted to leave us with anything.
Well, I do want to say thank you so much for having me on here. I really appreciate it, and it was glad that we got to have this conversation. So, Sherry.
Yeah, me too, Jill. And it was really nice to meet you and to bring the perspective. I know you and I are so much on the same page of just total support, total support for everyone. And I appreciate that from you. Yeah, we'll have you back. Hopefully, you'll come back and talk again with us.
I will.
Okay, good. Awesome. I love you guys so much. What a wonderful show. Thank you to all of my guests. Thank you guys for being here. We're going to say goodbye to all of you. Good night, everyone over there. Okay, bye. We'll talk to you soon. We'll have you back. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. Okay, awesome. Good night. And to everybody out there, go home, hug your children, hug your partners, love yourself, love your babies, love your life. Be grateful for what you have, okay? We all have something that we need to be grateful for and to appreciate what we have in our lives. And so many times we get distracted from that, and I think this is a perfect opportunity to remember that. I love you all so much, and I really appreciate what a wonderful audience you've all been. I will see you again next week. We'll be here back at 9 o'clock. Right? Tuesday night for our next episode of My Baby Experts. Good night, everyone. Mwah.